Max Gorlin, Melbourne Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
This is Nat Fyfe from the Fremantle Footy Club.
Trent Cotchin from the Richmond Footy Club.
Scott Pendlebury from the Collingwood Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Patrick Cooch from the Carlton Footy Club.
It's Rory Sloane here from the Adelaide Crows.
This is Tom Mitchell. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Bailey Smith has done what many would say is the unthinkable. He's changed from being a dog to a cat. He's headed down the highway to Cardinia Park, and the trade has finally gone through after at least 12 months of insinuation that he was heading out of Whitten Oval. What does this mean for Geelong? For the Bulldogs, is this a significant loss? And for fantasy footy coaches, how big of a win for us as a community is it in 2025 and beyond? We'll talk about all those things on this episode as we review the trade of Bailey Smith from the Western Bulldogs to the Geelong Cats. It's MJ from the Coaches Panel. I hope you are well, and I trust you've enjoyed this series so far. Every player that's moved clubs this trade and free agency period, we have a review episode of them on this channel. And if you haven't caught up with all of the players that have moved clubs so far, make sure you do so, helping you a little bit with my first thought reflections on what it means in 2025 for fantasy footy coaches. Bailey Smith's a phenomenal player. Sometimes injuries, and when we don't see a player for a long period of time, we forget just how good they are. And while coming back from an ACL won't be easy for Bailey, and we'll talk about that on this episode, the reality is prior to this, he was emerging as one of the up-and-coming young midfield stars in the AFL. His athleticism is and was unmatched at that time, playing sometimes upwards of 100% time on ground, which for a midfielder, up until Errol Goulden and Ed Langdon more recently, was pretty much unheard of a midfielder being able to do that. He has got elite athleticism, but to go with that, he's got some high-end speed, so that if he gets himself hands on the ball, whether it be in congestion or in space, he is able to separate himself from any opponent and then use his strong skills, especially by foot, to be able to set up inside forward 50 entries and link up and scoring opportunities for his teammates. So from a midfield perspective, he has got some elite traits, and he's not just a one-dimensional midfielder either. He can win the ball in at the contest. He's got a reasonable clip of contested ball winning rate from clearance, and he can then also get into space when he's playing off the wing and run and carry and create great opportunities for his team. One of the reasons for the move was 12 to 18 months ago. He was finding himself played more across the half forward line and then pushing up into the midfield. And at least it's been rumoured, but seemingly fairly well documented, that in 2022, he spent a lot of the year through the midfield, but 2023, it was a little bit split midfield forward. And one of the appeals of moving to Geelong for him was that opportunity to play more midfield. And maybe we should talk about what this means for the Cats. Well, Geelong, up until 12 months ago, their midfield was built on Dangerfield, on Guthrie, Selwood a little bit beyond that, and then some kind of role-playing guys with the likes of Atkins drifting in and out of there. Duncan had fallen out of the midfield unit and moved into the back line. Parfitt had rolled through there, and they tried a bunch of other guys. But clearly now, over the past 12 months, they've reinvigorated this midfield unit, and there's a couple of key leaders in it. Max Holmes, to me, is an absolute A-grade emerging star of the midfield. Was off the wing in that premiership year, more half-back to the start of this season, but as the year went on, became more of a centre bounce and clearance midfielder. So he wasn't just getting the ball in space, he was actually starting to win the ball in tight. He and Tanner Bruin are clearly, before this trade, the two best long-term mids for the club. Now, they've got some nice options that can roll through there. Bose, I think, is a handy depth player. I believe they think Jai Clark is going to come on and be a really nice contested ball winner. But what Bailey Smith does coming into this side for the Cats right now is it gives them speed and skill and athleticism for now, while Guthrie and Dangerfield are still around, but also gives them a future with Holmes and Bruin, let alone Clark or anybody else that might come through this midfield mix, it gives them a nice age profile. And any thoughts that the Geelong Cats were going to spend a year or two drifting from finals, well, yeah, that well and truly got squashed this year with the prelim, and it looks like that's going to continue. When you pick up a player of Bailey's skill set, inject that straight into the midfield, even coming off the back of an ACL, that's going to be perfectly fine. And on that, it does take players a little bit of time to come back from an ACL to get back to their peak. And while that's true, one of the advantages for Bailey is this. He did his injury early in the preseason, and so as a result, he's expected, according to Geelong, to play and to train the entirety of the preseason. And that's some of the reasons why a player does struggle to come back from an ACL and long-term injuries, is they just don't get the depth and the longevity of the preseason into them. Bailey's going to get that. So for Geelong and for Bailey, I think they're really confident they'll get him close to, if not back towards his peak physical levels and football levels to be able to dominate through the midfield. That's exactly where he's going to play. That's exactly why he departed the Bulldogs, is wanting to be a core and central piece of a midfield and doing it now and not waiting. He's doing that at Geelong. From the Bulldogs, what does it mean? Well, it hurts them long-term for sure. You don't lose a player of his skill set and ability and it not hurt as much as they hope to be able to replicate it with a first-round draft pick in a midfield heavy and a deep, strong midfield arguable super draft. They certainly will hope to pick up, and I think they will pick up a really nice player in the midfield. The reality is you don't lose a player like Bailey and it not hurt a little bit. That said, they have had 12 months to prepare for this, not just because it's been rumoured in AFL land that he wants out of the Bulldogs, but the ACL injury meant they've had to do a whole season actually executing, not just planning and preparing, but executing on a player that was clearly in their best 22 and a part of their midfield mix. They've had to make some adjustments already this year. And so Bailey coming out of this midfield unit has been something they've been doing already for the better part of 12 months. They've really gone locked in tight on what their midfield, at least the centre bounce midfield, looks like at the Western Bulldogs. It's Bontempelli, it's Treloar, it's Liberatore, and then a little bit of salt and pepper of some other fringe and peripheral players. But guys like a Riley Sanders, who they got early in the draft just 12 months ago, has been in and out of that, not just midfield, but in and out of the AFL side. And when he has been there, he's been playing more half forward. So I don't think from a Bulldogs perspective, they're going to feel right now that it's a painful loss because they're a super tight midfield. Now, longer term, I think they'll feel it a bit more with Libba and Treloar both on the wrong side of 30. Bontempelli still at the peak of his powers, but not in the early 20s like a Bailey Smith is. So seeing him depart the club, I feel like they've prepared for it and executed for it. But long term, I think they'd rather prefer him at the club.
I just MailChimped my marketing.
You MailChimped your what?
I MailChimped my marketing with AI to create an effective marketing campaign in minutes.
No, MailChimp and Way.
Yes, MailChimp and Way. Now I can hyper-personalize my campaigns across email and SMS.
You can do all that with MailChimp?
What did I just MailChimp and say?
MailChimp your marketing with the #1 AI-powered email marketing and automation platform, Intuit MailChimp. #1 based on publicly available data on competitors' customers. Plans vary. SMS available as add-ons. Visit MailChimp.com.
So a little bit of pain long-term, but right now they've done a pretty good job of preparing for it. From a fantasy footy perspective, what does it mean for us? Look, politely, he's going to be one of the most highly owned players in 2025. He was allocated to start the 2024 season with mid-forward status by Champion Data, which allocates the starting positions across all the formats. And with him not playing, he has not had an opportunity to lose that. So barring something catastrophic and almost unheralded in what I've seen over the past decade plus of covering fantasy footy, he'll be a mid-forward. And he'll be having that core midfield role at Geelong. That alone screams pick me. Throw on top of the fact he will receive a significant injury discount across the formats with him missing the full season. Gosh, this is going to be good news for us. If you want to look at that 23 season, well, half of it was spent across the half forward line. And so because his average will be, and the price he gets will be off that 2023 season, it's already got some favourable discount embedded into it because he's playing in a role that I do not forecast he will have at Geelong, which is a hybrid mid-forward role. But if you look at his 2022 season, it's pretty decent. 11 tons in AFL Fantasy, 3 scores of 120 plus and an average of 104, 17 games, 6 SuperCoach tons, 4 120 plus scores and a 98.3. Like, absolutely sensational. That's a pretty darn good 2022 year. That will be the year that AFL Fantasy put their discount onto him because they award their percentage discount on the higher of the 2 prior seasons. So while it'll be a 23 seasonal average in SuperCoach, which is an 80, which is an even better value price point for us, he's still going to get some value for us in AFL Fantasy, just not as significant as we should forecast in SuperCoach and in Dream Team. The reality is simple, and it's this. A player that has got a plum midfield role, that has got proven scoring pedigree, which Bailey has, and is forward eligible, which barring a shock he will have in 2025, and now at a discount, which he will be due to missing all of 2024. It just ticks all of the boxes for salary cap owners and classic players of the game to just get him. I can see him being the most highly owned forward that's not a cash cow in 2025. You put and you stack up all those reasons, it just makes sense for why so many people are going to own Bailey Smith in 2025. Now, could you go against him? Well, that will be a conversation we can have in the preseason and in my 50 most relevant series that kicks off with a player every day as we go through January and February. From January 1, that series will start. But I just see him being so highly owned next year with high historical scoring pedigree and a plum role at Geelong. It's going to be a brave coach to take him on, that is for sure, in salary cap and in drafts. He's going to get picked early by somebody because they'll see the potential of him getting that 100 average yet again, and they'll just absolutely jump at it because what we saw in drafts this year in forwards was outside of a handful. It's really hard to get a forward that could push their average in and around that 100 mark, let alone over. And Bailey's got that potential. So even on draft day, coming off an ACL, he's going to get picked relatively early. But do you agree with my take on Bailey Smith about how important it is for the Cats and what it means for us in fantasy footy in 2025? Comment below if you're watching this on YouTube and let me know what you think Bailey's going to average in 2025. If you're listening to this as an audio podcast and you haven't given us a 5-star rating or subscribed to the channel yet, today is a good day to do both of those things. You can keep in touch with us across social media, Instagram, X, Facebook, and TikTok. All the details are in the description of this episode. And it's there you can also find the links to our Patreon and the brand new Coaches Panel line of merch. Thanks so much for tuning in yet again as we review another player that has moved clubs. If you haven't gone back yet and checked out the others on this platform, you can go and do that as well. Make sure you check it out. We can't wait to be back chatting fantasy footy with you again real soon.